Hello, everyone. I'm Lana. Zach, thank you so much for joining me. We begin with the growing debate over coronavirus booster shots. An FDA advisory committee is expected to convene Friday to discuss the issue. The meeting will end with a vote on whether to approve a third dose of the Pfizer vaccine. The Biden administration has been pushing for boosters, but some health experts are questioning whether or not they're actually needed at this point. The FDA has so far remained neutral, saying current vaccines still protect against severe disease and death. Jonathan Vigliotti leads off our coverage from Los Angeles.
Tonight, some scientists are saying not so fast when it comes to COVID booster shots. It was just a month ago when the Biden administration was making its case.
We'd be able to get the booster shots at any one of approximately 80,000 vaccination locations nationwide. It will be easy.
But the Food and Drug Administration has declined to take a stance on the eve of an advisory committee meeting to decide whether to recommend approving Pfizer's application to give out third doses. This week, in an article published by the British medical journal The Lancet, scientists, including 2 outgoing FDA employees, argued currently available evidence does not show the need for widespread use of booster vaccinations. But there was also new research from Israel released by the FDA that suggested that waning immunity against severe disease may occur also in younger age groups. But it was older, more high-risk age groups that the booster dose was found to be most useful at reducing the risk of severe illness.
Exactly. It's really confusing. So,
Dr. Monica Gandhi says the confusion may be producing an unwanted side effect.
I think the messaging from the White House has served to terrify the vaccinated and make the unvaccinated think that the vaccines don't work. And that is exactly what the White House did not want to message.
And that fear, doctors say, comes at a time when ICU beds in cities like Spokane, Washington, are packed with COVID patients, many of them unvaccinated.
We're seeing levels of hospitalization that we've not seen since the beginning of the pandemic. And
Dr. Dan Getz says many of those patients are coming from Idaho, just a few miles away. Today, with hospitalizations soaring well past last winter's surge, the entire state is now under a crisis standard of care. Some hospitals are rationing treatment,
which is really every physician's worst nightmare. And it's going to lead to very real deaths, and not just deaths from COVID. We're talking about people that are having heart attacks, that are delaying care for cancer. This affects all of us.
Officials here in Los Angeles are taking their mandate one step further. Starting next month, people will be required to show proof of vaccination before entering bars and nightclubs. The bar we're standing in among those that voluntarily chose to do exactly that last month. Lana?
Jonathan, thank you. For more now, I want to bring in Dr. Andre Campbell. He is a critical care physician and a professor at the University of California at San Francisco. Welcome, Dr. Campbell. Health experts, as you heard, are divided over booster shots. Remind us what the science says. And do you believe that we're in a place where boosters are necessary for certain populations?
So, Lana, thanks so much for having me this evening to chat about this. Is an important issue. I mean, I think before we get to boosters, say if you're not vaccinated, get vaccinated, number one, right? So what is happening now is that we're getting information that is quite preliminary from Israel that perhaps in older groups, people over 60, immunosuppressed groups, and so elderly people, folks who are transplant patients, people who are cancer patients can probably benefit from getting a booster vaccine. Now, what's going to happen is the FDA will have a discussion and they'll look at the literature, and the literature will basically point out to what happens. And I think one thing you have to understand is that whenever we give vaccinations, there is a waning effect. And what happens is everybody worries about this waning effect having a problem in the breakthrough cases that people are hearing about. And we're still learning about the breakthrough cases. So right now, it is approved for 16 and up, and we should vaccinate everybody we can. Right now, we only have 53% of people in the United States fully vaccinated. So it is important that those people get vaccinated because, as you saw in the lead-up piece in Idaho, we're getting into disaster situations because we're running out of resources. So the problem is it's largely a epidemic or a pandemic of the unvaccinated, but if there's going to be some breakthrough cases, and that's what makes everybody nervous, and that's why we're having this discussion about to boost or not. So right now, it's probably going to be older people, people immune suppressed for cancer patients, people who have transplants, those kind of things, to start off with it before they open it up to everybody. But this is certainly an important discussion to have.
So those first and second shots are still the most important, and possibly the third for immunocompromised or elderly populations. So with that in mind, then, what will FDA officials need to know before they make that decision on Friday about whether to approve that third shot?
So what they'll do is they'll look at what's happening now with the vaccines we've gotten. So there is some suggestion that after 6 months, there is some waning immunity, so that some of the people got vaccinated in December and January. It's more than 6 months. And what they'll do is they'll look at what happens to those patients. So the subset of patients who were vaccinated early, what's happening with them? Do they have breakthrough infections? What's the rate of that? To go from there. So I think that's what everybody's nervous about, this rate of breakthrough infections, that people are talking about right now. And that's why the booster discussion is on the table right now, because we certainly know that these vaccines work. They're very effective, and they keep you from getting really sick and going to the hospital. We know that right now. So what we need to do is make sure that we collect the data that we have, as much as it is, and then make that decision when the FDA group meets on Friday.
So, as you mentioned, there is still a problem with people getting that first dose of vaccinations. Luckily, it has actually, the pace has slightly increased for the first time in about 2 weeks. The 7-day average is still below 300,000. And then wading into this right now is Senator Nicki Minaj, who tweeted this week that her cousin's friend got the vaccine and, quote, became impotent. We know that this claim has been investigated and officials have found no evidence to back it up. But how much does misinformation like this from prominent people actually hurt doctors like you who are trying to convince people to get those first and second shots?
So let me just say, first of all, there is no evidence that the vaccine causes any problems related to fertility. There's no problem related to impotence, and there's no problem related to swelling of the testicles. So that is absolutely positively wrong. Now, what has happened is she's triggered a firestorm of a response. Even the health minister of Trinidad actually had to respond to this. They actually looked everywhere, they couldn't find it. Now, there are other reasons why you can have swelling in that area, including sexually transmitted diseases or other types of infections, but not the COVID vaccine. So misinformation abounds. We must snap it and get at the root of it as soon as it happens. And we have to let people know that these things are wrong. Now, she has 22 million followers, and I know she's trying to get the word out, and I'm not sure if she knew how much power she really has. But the reality is that we're struggling to get people to get vaccinated, particularly in underrepresented minority groups. Right, so that what she said was absolutely positively wrong. It does not affect fertility in either men or women, and it does not cause swelling of your testicles in a man. So just sort of be very clear about that. Right, this is wrong. We must stop it. Even things like ivermectin, the whole hydroxychloroquine stuff, that stuff does not work. What works is vaccinations, and it's free.
The most important thing I'm hearing from you and from every other doctor I've spoken with are those vaccinations. And that's particularly true, as we saw, as ICU beds are filling up again in some cities. Given that you're a critical care physician, what are you seeing on the front lines?
So I have to say it's interesting. So in California, where we've been very good about adhering to public health mandates like masking and getting vaccines, San Francisco has an 80% vaccination rate. The state of California has a per case rate which is way low on the national average. Right now, it's 295 per 100,000 for the whole country. In San Francisco and California, all of California, it's only 20 for 100,000. That means that the case positivity rate across the country is 9 or 10%. But in California, it's about 4% or 3%. So there's some hope that things will get better. At the height of the pandemic in San Francisco, in our hospital, we had about 70 cases. Right now, today, we have about 18 with 6 in the ICU. So we still have some. So we have less than we before, and there's indication perhaps we're peaking. The other thing that's encouraging that where there's outbreaks in other school systems when they open the schools. So you heard about the 500,000 children who got infected in the first week across the country. In San Francisco, cross our fingers, so far, we've not had an outbreak here. And we think it's because of the adherence to mandating, the issue related to ventilation and distancing, and the high rate of vaccination we have. So there is hope that we can get through this.
Well, it is that reminder that the vaccinations not only serve ourselves, but it also serves others. Dr. Andre Campbell, thank you for joining me, and thank you for all that you do.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate that.